I'm sure that the question in most of your minds right now is, who is that? My name is Father Mark Gazin, as Monsignor Neil mentioned, and I'm a member of a religious community under the patronage of Saint Basil, called the Basilian Fathers. We were founded in France, southern France, way back in 1822, and we used to look after a school and two parishes, St. Barbara and St. Basil. And when choosing our name, we just thought it sounded much better to be known as the Basilian Fathers rather than the Barbarian Fathers. We arrived in Toronto, Ontario, Canada in 1852, and we looked after immigrant Irish people. And over the years, we Basilians, we're not from Brazil, we have been and we are active in various apostolates in the church. We founded St. Michael's University College in Toronto at the University of Toronto, St. John Fisher College over in Rochester here in New York, and the University of St. Thomas down in Houston, Texas. I'm originally from the West Coast, from Vancouver. I was born in California, so I have dual citizenship. I met the Basilian Fathers at the University of British Columbia, but we are involved in high school ministry in Detroit, in Houston, Toronto, as well as in parish ministry. And I'm currently working at Assumption Parish in Windsor, across the river from Detroit, Michigan. That parish was founded in 1767. We Basilians, we also work in parishes in Texas, where in 1933, we began assisting migrant workers from Mexico. And so consequently, over the decades, we began participating in the church's missionary apostolate. We maintain missions in Mexico and down in Colombia, South America. I'm with you as a representative at all of the masses this weekend, as a representative of our Basilian missionaries. And I'll be celebrating with you the masses this weekend. And I'm very, very grateful for the hospitality and the kindness of your pastor, Monsignor Neil Courtier. I hear you've got a new bishop too, and he comes from way up north where Canada is, Ogdensburg. Bishop Douglas Lucier. Did I say his name right? Lucier? Lucier, okay. But anyway, Monsignor Neil has given me this opportunity to share with you some of our missionary endeavors in Latin America. We have 3 priests, Basilians, who come from Syracuse. But those missionary Basilians in Pueblo, in Mexico, in the state of Puebla, in the diocese of Tehuacan, they came mostly from Detroit and Houston. And today there are Mexican Basilians. Where's Tehuacan? Well, it's just south, more or less, of Mexico City. And there, some of our Basilian priests have encountered some of the real sad realities in this part of the world. There's chronic unemployment. Many are compelled to leave their families to find work in larger cities of Mexico. Some of them come here, and perhaps you may even know some of them come here to Syracuse, and some go to Canada as well. The sad reality is when the husband, the father, or the older brothers are not in the home, family life suffers. And this sad reality becomes worse when some will have to leave the United States because of lack of legal documents. Poverty is another sad reality in Puebla state, the state of Puebla. There are many elderly, poor, and infirmed who do not have the necessary resources to maintain a simple, healthy diet. And so we Basilians, we try to provide proper food through food banks. And I'm sure you have food banks here to help people who struggle in this area of life. But these people are really struggling, and often elderly, they lack the funds that are necessary for medicine. And our Basilians work in Tehuacan with several doctors and nurses who volunteer their services to help these men and women with treatments and donated medicine. Let me share with you another group that you might be surprised that suffer from terrible poverty. Young people and youth. Many of the youth that we work with have been blessed by the Lord with intelligence and motivation. Unfortunately, they don't have enough funds to pursue their educational hopes and dreams. And we try to help these young men and women with a program of mini scholarships. In Cali, Colombia, our community, the Basilian Fathers, established a school back in 1982, and it's become very successful in an extremely poor section of the city. It's rated academically among one of the top 10 schools in Colombia, South America, but it relies on the material donations of others. You see, all of us are called to participate in the church's missionary apostolate, but not all of us, me included, can travel to all of these places. One of my favorite poets is Robert Frost. And thinking of Jesus' response in the gospel about striving to enter through the narrow door, I think I would like to share with you just a little part of his famous poem, two roads diverged in a yellow wood. Sorry, I could not travel them both. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. I didn't tell you the whole poem because I didn't want to bore you with a whole poem, but I first studied that poem when I was 17, and I remember I wanted an adventurous life. I took a number of vocation retreats, but it was the Basilian Fathers who answered my desire to serve the people of God and to journey in faith. I think I took the road less traveled. For many years, I worked in university campus ministry, and I met many people who doubted the existence of God, thinking that religion is simply a crutch for people who need support. However, my studies of people like C.S. Lewis and Dorothy Day and various saints and other searching souls led me to an awareness that the door to God's kingdom is entered through the narrow way. There's a Peanuts cartoon showing Charlie Brown getting up early one morning and looking out the window. It's lovely winter day, but it's really cold, but it's perfect for skiing. So he bundles up with several layers of clothes. He puts on big gloves and skis. When he gets to the door, he discovers he's so bundled up, he can't get through the door. So he screams at the top of his lungs. This image of Charlie Brown standing at the door, but unable to get through the door, is a good image of so many people today. They want to follow Jesus, but we're so bundled up with material concerns, can't get through the door. So we get stressed out and we yell at inanimate objects. And sometimes it's not just the material possessions and concerns that keep us from passing through the door. Sometimes it's the fear of what other people think about us. I remember hearing a story about the photographer who took the most famous photograph of the Second World War. It's the picture of the 4 Marines planting and raising the U.S. flag on Mount Suribachi on Iwo Jima in the Pacific Ocean. The photographer who took that picture braved minefields, machine gun fire to record it. His name was Joe Rosenthal. He wasn't a stranger to courage. He was a Jew who became convinced that Jesus is not only the promised Messiah, but also the Son of God. He became a Catholic. And his family and his friends thought he was making a mistake. He loved his family, but he went against their wishes. It was painful for him, but he had to follow his conscience. When his photograph was published, it won awards everywhere, and everybody wanted to know about Joe Rosenthal. And in an interview, he told a journalist, "The day before we went ashore at Iwo Jima, I attended Mass and received Holy Communion." And then referring to his conversion to Catholicism, he said, "If a man is genuinely convinced that he has the truth and still neglects it, he's a traitor." And that goes not only for my Jewish friends who fail to attend synagogue on Saturday, but also for my Catholic friends who miss Mass on Sunday. So sometimes what keeps us from entering the door to God's kingdom is not just simply material possessions and concerns, but also what people are going to say and think about us. This story of Joe Rosenthal also illustrates a second major point that Jesus says in the gospel today. He says, "Some are last who will be first, and some are first who will be last." Joe did not begin his life as a follower of Jesus, like many of you and I did. In that sense, he was last and we were first. But his discovery of Jesus and his dedication to put him ahead of many people who grew up with faith in Jesus. In that sense, Joe Rosenthal, even though he was last, he became first. On that point, we Basilian Fathers, we ask you for your support, that we might continue our missionary efforts in Latin America. Please, help us. It's only through the generosity of parish communities like you that we're able to even continue this work of evangelization. And in advance, I'd like to thank you for your generosity. Thank you for not cutting your donation to your parish in half today for this missionary second collection. Although your financial sacrifice might cause you a little bit of suffering, it's going to relieve a lot more suffering than you could possibly imagine. A $5 or a $10 US bill will go much further in Mexico or in Colombia than it will here. In addition to your financial generosity, we also need your prayers and your spiritual support. Please pray for the people of Latin America. The country of Venezuela is right next door to Colombia. Some of our Basilians have been helping people from Venezuela as well. And these people have been hearing the gospel for centuries longer than you and me, but their suffering is more. The story of Joe Rosenthal that I just shared with you, I think helps us appreciate better the meaning of the gospel. You see, the road to the kingdom of heaven is narrow, not because God made it that way, but because we tend to make it that way ourselves. We get wrapped up in our possessions and concerns about what others think about us. So we tend to be more like Charlie Brown, standing at the door, frustrated, yelling, stressed out. Let's imitate Joe Rosenthal, not Charlie Brown. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Amen.